Welcome to the Clutch Burners Podcast. This is your home for stick shift drag racing, stick shift tech, and more. Tonight we have our regular hosts, me, Bill Armstrong, and Canadian Chuck Norris, Rich Guido, and our guest tonight is Jeff Sias. That's right, small block, naturally aspirated drag week winner times 2, if I'm not mistaken. Jeff Sias. Let's just get straight to it. Hi, Jeff. How are you?
What's up, Bill? What's up, Rich?
Nothing. How you doing? Yeah, it's
good. How you guys
been a
doing?
while since I think the last time you and I had a long conversation was just before you had your son.
No, we just talked recently about oil pumps and valve train.
Yeah, but I mean a long conversation.
Oh yeah, like actually, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But that's all good.
Yeah.
So you are a 2-time small block naturally aspirated drag week winner. Wait, 3?
3
oh,
times,
boy.
yeah.
I'm
came back 2023.
And Rich, did you know that this guy runs a, what is it? Oh, it's a small block Ford. That's right.
Small block Ford?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right.
The Lord's engine.
That's true. That's true.
I thought it was like an antiquated LS. Isn't that what those things are?
No, not mine. Mine's better than that. It's got the valves that they move in on an angle on the Cleveland heads, so that makes it, it goes from 10 to 11 when you
that is
a small block Ford.
Yeah, if you're NA and you're not running a Yates style head, like that's what they call them, right? I mean Cleveland style, but a Yates, and you have the Higgins heads from Australia, mate.
That head just bolts on to like a stock Cleveland. That he made it that way where you can bolt like a Cleveland manifold because the Clevelands are way more popular in Australia. So there's guys that will just that's just a bolt-on cylinder head like a Windsor is to ours. But the guy that did the port development was actually one of the people that was involved with developing the D3 cylinder heads for NASCAR.
Nice.
So that's why they're, as good as
nice.
They are.
And I think a little background, because some people may not be familiar, but they made the Cleveland in Australia till, was it 83, I believe? From the factory, like an OEM. Cleveland came out until 1983. And in the States, it was done by 73, I believe. And then it became kind of a homologation or whatever. I don't even think I got the word right, but it became a 400 and a 351M, but it had a different bell housing on it. And they're not terrible, but they were smog engines.
Yeah, I think they were like a bigger bore space too, so they're technically a big block, like the M's.
Okay,
I think so.
Okay,
I don't know that much about that stuff though.
Yeah, but
they could still be making Clevelands in Australia right now, for all I know.
Fact.
Well, why don't we back up a bit and tell us a bit about yourself? I know that you've been pretty busy lately with young kids and something law school.
No, engineering.
Engineering.
Jeff Sias. I did my first drag week in 2013, and then 15. I went back 2016 also, and then I had my son in 2018. And also in 16, I really ramped up going back to school at night for mechanical engineering. So basically, I kind of took a break. I knew that was going to happen. I knew 2016 was sort of my last drag week for a while at that point because you miss almost 2 weeks of classes doing drag week because it's the first week. So it's impossible to try to be doing engineering school and do an event that pays in jackets. So it just I should probably just take a break from this for a minute and come back later. And then, so I had those years, I had a small block Ford, Dart aluminum block with high ports on it, 240cc high ports, similar, probably like an NA version of what Bill's got in his car. And,
Yep.
And then in 2018, I was getting ready I almost was going to put an LS in the car because Dart had that, they had that Dart cylinder head, that 10-degree cylinder head that you could get for at that time, you could get a bare casting for so cheap, like $1,200 or something like that. And those are the ones that, guys like Ben Strader building 1,300 horsepower small blocks with. And so I was like, well, I'll have to make a manifold, but they switched the ports around on that head. So in my mind, it was getting closer to a small block Ford than even the previous LSs was. So that's how I signed off myself on that one. But I was getting ready to buy them, and I was like I was on Jegs about to press the button, and then that Higgins video came out where they made like 900 horsepower on pump gas with those heads, and they said that at the time they were like $5,000 Australian. And then so that's what those cylinder heads and that intake manifold package have like kind of. I bought those in 2018, and then started building the new engine in like late or early 2019 is when we started building it. We're trying to get ready to go back to drag week in 2019, but had some problems right before drag week, and then just couldn't make it then. Was going to do Midwest drags in 2020, but we all know what happened there. So pandemic hit. Also found out I was pregnant with my wife was pregnant. I can't get pregnant.
Different show, different podcast, Jeff.
Yeah, different podcast. We don't want that here. That's for the automatic podcasts.
Yeah, Mark's on that podcast right now.
Yeah, exactly. He's over there. He's like, I tried to get Jeff to switch his car to an automatic. He just wouldn't listen. So my wife's pregnant in 2020, and my daughter just turned 4 Thursday on November 14th. So we did like all the
happy birthday
celebrations this weekend and all that fun stuff. So
yeah,
but yeah, I've been at this drag week stuff for 11 years now. I went back in 2023, and it's been a crazy ride with the car. I've had this car since 2003.
And tell us what the car is. I mean, I know what it is. But...
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. It's a 1990 Ford Mustang notchback, small block Ford. It had a Liberty 5-speed in it, 8.8 rear, a 10-point cage, like all your standard stuff. I always had the car a certain way. I didn't want to like mini tub it. I wanted to do everything myself as much as I could. So that's why I kept it NA. It was nitrous for a little while when it had a 345-inch motor in it, but and it ran like high 10s on motor with that setup and high 9s with nitrous. And then I went to the 427, but I never did like turbos or anything like that because I felt like I would have to pay somebody to do it. So I wanted to like keep everything as much as I could in-house. And then the car had kind of just, I had a Novi 2000 set up for it back in like 2005. And the guy who tuned it didn't put a rev limiter in because he just assumed that I had a MSD box. So he thought I had like a 6AL or something on it hidden somewhere that he couldn't see, like a invisible one. And so
Bluetooth one.
Yeah. And so my first time ever trying to power shift was at Lebanon Valley Dragway. And I saw the tack. This is stock bottom end deal. So I saw the tack coming down from like 8,000 because I missed the gear. And it dropped a valve. I had to get towed home. And then after that,
it just kept coming down from $8,000 all the way to zero.
Yeah. It was done. It was done. The piston said hello to the valve and they became friends forever.
Yeah.
And you've always had the same transmission in it?
No, back then it had a 3550 Tremec when I bought it. And then I had that faceplated. Liberty faceplated that way back in the day. And then I broke that one on my wedding day.
Were you doing a
tried to-
burnout at your wedding?
Yeah, I was trying, and I'd gotten really good with the 345-inch motor. I'd gotten really good with like getting in second and then just whacking third really quick, and it sounded cool. And I had never done it with the 427, and it was like, this is 2014, so I already did drag week with it and everything, but there's all these people behind me, and I got cans flying off of the car and everything, so I was like, I'm gonna go for it. And then I did, and I shifted third, and it knocked, like, I don't know, most of the teeth off of third gear. And that third gear is actually the one that's on the stick shift drag week trophy.
Oh, really?
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's
You're
when I
even more
broke in my
famous
wedding.
now.
Yeah. That my name's on that trophy. That's good enough for me, even though it's second place,
Yeah.
But yeah, so I broke that transmission, and then I put a faceplated TKO 600 in it. And this is back before
With the 427?
with the 427, yeah.
Oh, I know where this story's going.
Yeah, same place as the last one. And it was before I had
go bye-bye.
Yeah, it was like one pass at the track. That was it. Because I had a Power Force clutch in it back then, and it was like dual disc, and it was just way too aggressive. Yeah, it was so aggressive. And we got that clutch to work halfway decent on drag week in 15, but we went from dual bronze discs to a single centered iron disc, and that clutch was really tough. It was very finicky. Like, if it had the lever set up where you could add, when you'd add 1, 2, or 3 levers, but when you go from like 1 to 2 levers, it was so drastic of a change. You'd have to like open the air gap up on the clutch like 30 thousandths, because just to get it to like get the pedal to disengage the clutch on the shifts. So that was the one that was in there when I broke the TKO 600, and then I was like $5,000 or $6,000 worth of transmissions down the toilet in one season. So that's when I sent Liberty a deposit for the LSC 5100, and so I had that in the car from 2015 all the way up until like just now. I just sold it a couple months ago.
And so now what are you putting in it?
So I'm going to do a GF5R. The Liberty's been great, but I just want to like change directions and do things a little bit differently. So I'm at the limit of where I can go with that gear ratio split, because I had the transmission set up where I'm running it as a 4-speed at the track. So it had a 377 first with I ran a 327 rear gear for a long time, and then switched to a 355 right before drag week this year. And the 1-2 split was just really bad. I've been fighting like the car shaking on the 1-2 shift for since like 2020. Since I put the car together with the bigger engine, making more power. Even I've tried like everything. I've tried everything but a better 1-2 gear ratio split, basically. I mean, I had a 26-inch tire on it. I changed the clutch every which way. I've changed the shocks every which way. I've tightened up the front end, tightened up the rear end, loosened up the rear end on the rebound and the compression. And it's like anything I did, if I tightened the rebound up a lot, I could get it decent on the slicks. But it was still, I'd have to like pedal it every single run on the 1-2 shift. And then I made the suspension geometry more aggressive this year, and I put radials on it. And I don't think that was the right direction to go, because it just magnified the problem of shifting into second and not having enough I don't know if the car just doesn't have enough ground speed to cover the drop, but I'm ready for just a race 5-speed and just have five gears going down the track like Frank, basically.
Yeah. So the gap was just too big.
You just want to, yeah. So ultimately, you want to be like Frank.
I want to be like Frank. Yeah.
Well, okay. We all do.
All right.
Like,
I mean, yeah.
That's pretty clear. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nice.
What was the second gear ratio?
Yeah.
It was a 250. So
from a what'd you say, 327 to a
377 to a 250. Yeah. So
that's a big drop.
It was geared similar to the way a Tremec, like a TKO 500 would be. But I don't know if it's just like you're fighting not having the leverage of the rear gear on top of it, because it's like the numbers all look the same, but I don't think that they really were acting the same way as if, but I don't know, I'd have to put a TKO 500 in the car and see, or like a TKX or something, and see what it would do back to back to really be able to prove that. But I think that there was something to that.
Could you do that and call us next week?
Yeah. just send me one.
Well,
StickShiftNation.com. If you could send me one of those. I've been running your parachute tag forever, so I've been advertising out here.
Nice.
Which,
and
Travis, you should start making those again, because it's the nicest parachute tag on the planet. I would go to the track, and that thing has survived like I don't know how many miles on an open trailer, and it looks brand new.
Perfect. What's the new transmission have for first and second gear?
So I've been working with Charlie Booz, who does a lot of Coyote stock racing and hot street. He's been at this stuff for a long time. So me and him went back and forth on the ratios, and it's looking like somewhere between like a 297 and like a 315. He's talking to G-Force, I think, to Mark, and to see where we should be. I know G-Force kind of wanted to be a little more on the conservative side, and I was thinking more like a 308 or something like that. So I think we settled on like a 306, and then we could get like a 222 second gear.
Okay.
So a couple questions.
Like a long. Sorry, go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, sorry, my delay. So you did go a new PB with radials this year, though, right?
I did, yeah. Yeah.
At
927 at like 3,200 pounds.
That is impressive as hell. Yeah, for an NA motor. Oh, but I keep forgetting it is a small block Ford. So
it is small block Ford. Yeah. It's all the cylinder heads, man. I can't say enough good things about those cylinder heads.
So I'd like to back up a little bit.
Sure.
I'd like you to talk about, you had a Dart aluminum block for a while. Mm-hmm. I'd like you to talk about why you're still not running that. Maybe some of the things that you learned with that. And then dive a bit into valve train. Maybe Higgins just spec'd all that out in the cam as well, or who did you work with? Just kind of go into some of those details.
Yeah, that's the key to the setup too, is the valve train. I got some pretty cool stuff going on in there. The aluminum block. Well, first, street race, they switched to 3,200 pounds for a minimum weight. And so right there, it's like now I got to add 150 pounds to the car if I want to stay in this class. And so that played into the decision. But the aluminum block on drag week in 2013, 15, and 16, it was like the lash would grow so much throughout the course of the day. When everything got heat soaked, we'd set the lash at like 8 cold, and it would be at like 24 hot.
Ooh.
But that's just like regular hot. That's just like up to operating temperature. Pull the valve covers off as quick as you can and check them. And so on a 20, 30-mile drive, like they're fine. But when you get on those drives where the car's running for 10 hours, like the valve train would just start making a lot of noise. And so I never really liked that. It just, I had to check the valve lash a lot. And then in 2016, we lost a lifter. But I don't blame the block for that. I think that I went a little bit longer on my oil change interval. And I think with the Bush lifter, it was, they had already had a full drag week on them. And then whatever time I had driven on the street for the last like 2 years. So I had a spare set ready to swap in. And so we put the spare set in, and luckily it just took the bushing out. The lifter forks didn't get into the cam at all. And we were able to just switch them in the parking lot in Ohio. And like we were back at the racetrack. We started working on it like 6:30 in the morning, and we got back to the racetrack by, I think it was like 9, and we were on the road by like 11 o'clock in the morning still.
And whose lifters were they?
They were Iskies.
Like the red zones?
Yeah, whatever like the standard bore Isky ones were. But they were bushed at the time. They're like the $1,300 lifters or something.
Did you give any consideration at all to a hydraulic because the lash was moving around so much?
I thought about it, yeah, and that was a conversation I had with Ed Curtis at Flowtech Induction. Did the camshaft on the new setup, and I'd asked him like what he thought about going to like a 904 hydraulic roller lifter with a big camshaft, like a larger core camshaft. And he was like, you just can't run as much spring pressure and you're going to be limited. So just don't even bother. Okay. Basically. And so what we ended up with was also I thought that it might make a little more power with an iron block versus aluminum, just with ring seal. I don't know how much that really comes into play when you're using a vacuum pump too. The ring packs that I've run have always been pretty aggressive for, street car stuff. I got right now I think we have a 0.93 millimeter oil ring. And so, those top two rings are only like 40 thousandths of an inch thick or something.
Yeah, like they're pretty tiny.
And so if you don't run the pump on it, you can see it smokes and things like that. So I don't know how much really the ring seal makes a difference. They made about the same power. I think that the camshaft now versus when I had the aluminum block, it had a 2-inch 81 thousandths core. So it was like a little bit bigger than a stock core. And then we basically just took those specs and sent them to Charlie Westcott, the militia cams, and I said, can you make me a 60 millimeter cam with these specs? And so it's the same camshaft almost, but it's on a much bigger core. And so the camshaft has like over 200 thousandths more base circle on it than the old one did, going up to the 60. And so I think that is a huge part of stability and reliability with valve train is like just get the biggest cam core that you can in there.
Is that a tool steel cam you have in there now by chance?
Yeah, that's all you can get with the 60. It's just like they're taking a bar and they're making it. There's no way around that.
Nice.
And it's got 937 lifters in it now.
Ooh, big ones.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't messing around with this one. It was like I just want all the stuff.
Yeah, and this is a Gen 1 dart block because they have a Gen 2.
It's the new one
with the rectangular lifter. I don't know what you call it.
Yeah, it's like the raised up boss on the lifter.
Yeah, and it's just a big rectangular going all the way down.
Yeah, and it's got
Yep.
the additional head bolts and all that stuff too.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that would be the big factor to identify it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you know how much your last changes now? Cold to hot?
I think I set them at 16 cold, and it's like 22 hot.
What a difference, eh?
And they never move around either. With the aluminum block, I felt like I was always chasing a couple thou here and there. And this one at the first check, or at the first first or second hotel at Drag Week, I checked them in the parking lot and at the hotel parking lot, and they were on the money. And I was like, I'm not even going to look at these again for the rest of the week because they're right where we set them.
That's a pretty good feeling compared to having a big gap that's all over the place. I had an aluminum Pontiac for a while. It was the same thing. It was a mess.
The other ones,
even oil pressure. Crazy. Yeah. Probably has to do with, I'm going to say it from my point of view, the quality of the aluminum that the block was made of. But even when we were doing machine work, if you would heat the block up a bit and check stuff, everything was changing so much. And even to try to check lash hot, by the time you did one side and moved to the other side, it had changed so much that you almost had to run the engine again, shut it off, like you said, pull the valve covers off quick and check them, but it wasn't worth it. I got a big iron block.
I've done that. Yeah. I've checked them on one side and then started back up, let it get to 180 and check the other side. And it's like, this is crazy.
So I have the same dart block, and I am curious on notching the lifters and oiling, because they did change the oil system a bit on that second gen block.
Yeah.
Did you guys have any issues with that? What did you end up with for notching the lifters?
No, we didn't notch the oil holes or anything like that. The one thing that we did run into, which I don't think a lot of people run, a 937 tie bar lifter. And so everything gets so tight in there that they had to clearance the side of the lifter body right below the wheel. Because it was on a couple of the lifters, it was rubbing the lobe on the camshaft. It was basically when the valve would start opening, it would ride on the base circle for 10 or 20 thousandths of lift. And then it would, when the other lobe would come up, it would lift it off of the other side. So when the guys built the engine this time around, they clearanced the lifters on the side. But, that's something that it's really hard to catch something like that, because if you have the engine sitting on the stand and you have lash, you got 20 thousandths worth of lash, you probably wouldn't even see it happening. But I can only imagine, once you get that thing running up at 8,500 RPMs, what it's doing in there. It's probably a mess.
Well, it's making metal for sure.
It didn't, though.
Really?
I've checked every filter that I've ever pulled off of that thing. I cut every filter, and it ran like that for a few hundred miles before I pulled everything apart to do the dart block setup.
Interesting. Huh. Nice. So then,
firm believer in the big lifters, though. I had standard Pontiac's 841, and I had failures with good lifters, but as soon as I went to 904s, I haven't had any problems. I mean, I think one, but those lifters might have had 50,000 miles on them, so they really didn't owe me anything. But I'm sure with a 930, just spreading out that load, and you're the mechanical engineer now, so definitely a good way to go. A lot more longevity, I think.
You go from a 750 wheel to an 850 wheel, going from a 870 lifter to a 937. So,
and I'm on a 904 as well in mine. And I'm not sure what size wheel that is. Do you know?
810.
810. Okay.
Yeah. Which I probably would have been fine going 904. But really what sold me on it was talking to Jason Tabscott with, for people that don't know, he's when you talk about small block NA racing, I mean, he's the guy. He's the best that's done it in a long time with that. And he told me he had like 5 seasons on his Morel 937 lifters, and his stuff is like way more aggressive than what I was doing at that time.
Yeah.
And it's gotten even more aggressive, but that's a whole other conversation. He's a madman.
Yeah. And so then let's move up to push rods. I'm guessing you're running a pretty big push rod.
Yeah. So they're 1/2 inch tapered down to 7/16. Yeah. I got 2 spares. Nice. So if anybody gets wild in the parking lot, we have self-defense.
Right.
You look at them and it's like, this is insane. I'm glad that's inside of my engine, because as big and stiff as possible. I mean,
what kind of spring pressure are you running?
Not much. 190 no, not even 190. 170 on the seat, and I think it's like 650 open.
How much lift?
850. Like 830 with lash.
Now those heads being a Cleveland base, it's a 173 rocker ratio, right?
No, it's 185.
Oh wow, even bigger.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. That's kind of what the heads were designed around.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. So you don't have a ton of lobe lift. It's all happening. A lot of it's happening at the rocker.
Yeah, which I think even with the 60 millimeter cam, it even it's like all that gets exaggerated even more.
Right. So, what valve train, like Jessel or Crowler or something, rail rockers? I know they're canted valve deal, but
yeah, it has T&D rockers on it. T&D steel rockers. Because I watched Drag Week for a long time before I went and did it, and I had Crowler rockers on my old Highport setup, and I love those. And at the time, I mean, it was like it was silly not to buy the steel Crowler ones, because they were like the same price as what the Jessel aluminum was back then.
Yeah, and that's what I run. I have a Highport 240, and I love the Crowler stuff. It's fantastic.
Yeah, if they made a rocker for this cylinder head, I would have bought theirs again, definitely. But the T&D ones are great too, and T&D steel. And then, because I watched people break rocker bodies, aluminum ones, like at some point they end up breaking. So I wanted to have steel ones, and that's
I mean, the aluminum has a cycle life. Steel really doesn't, from that standpoint. So
it has one, but it's like so many more. It's it's like infinity times what the aluminum is almost.
Right. Now those heads have pretty big valves. Like you have probably like a 219 intake, or what?
219. That's no 2 inch 235. I think is what's in there.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
those heads flow like the cylinder heads, whenever you get flow numbers, you're like, all right, I'll take these with a grain of salt. And he told us that they would flow 436 at like 850 lift. And I was like, well, if they, for what I paid for them, if they flow over 400, that's cool. And we were flowing them, and it was like, it was not making the numbers, and we were messing around with like all these port spacers and everything, and we're molding clay around, and I was like, can we just bolt the intake to it and see what happens? And so we bolt the intake to it, and it picked up like 30 CFM, and they went 438 CFM on the flow bench right in front of us. So badass.
Can you imagine those heads with boost? My God.
Yeah, you look at like Frank Marchese. Have you ever seen his car from Australia?
Not familiar.
The guy, he's crazy. Like, there's a video of him where he starts celebrating in the shutdown when the car is running like nines. He's celebrating, and then the car starts getting all sideways and everything, and so he's got to like save the car after he's celebrating. And it's like, that's such an Australian way to cross the finish line.
What was the guy's name? I got to watch it now.
Frank Marchese. But he's got one of those 4-door Fords, and the thing weighs like 4,000 pounds, and he's been 680s with the Higgins heads and twin 88s.
Wow.
Jesus.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Crazy.
Yeah, that's something else. Damn. All right. So that's impressive.
Have you asked all your Ford questions yet?
Almost. So
okay.
Not carbureted anymore. You're fuel injected. Holly down.
No, but
right?
I did want to mention the springs though, because the springs are I think where the magic's at in my setup. It has a comp 7245 conical dual spring.
Dual.
Yeah. It's like they made one for a solid roller application, and that's the one. And I think that, Ben at EFI University, I think he used one and they went to like 10,500 RPMs with them.
Mm.
And so when I saw that, I talked to Ed and I was like, hey, can we use this spring on my setup? Because I think that's the way to go. You have the spring that's, it's this big at the bottom, but at the top, it's like that. And so it's like almost half the size up top. And that's where you have to control all the mass anyways, is up top. So yeah, they're like 170 pounds on the seat. So between that, I have like very light spring pressure, a very big push rod, and a very stiff rocker arm. And so I think that's, knock on wood, I think my valve train is pretty much bomb proof because of those things. And the spring is kind of like the thing that ties everything together. Because you guys know this as good as anybody. If you get the wrong valve spring in your combination, you're going to have a bad time.
Forever and ever. It's just fight. You just continually fight, and you'll chase a million different things until you change your valve springs.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it's hard because then you got to do like new retainers, and you got to do all the things and recheck everything. And if you're not at the engine shop and you're trying to do that, it's very difficult.
And how high are you spinning it?
You're correct.
I shift right around 82.
Oh yeah, not crazy,
but I've spun it like on the engine dyno. We spun it all the way up to like 8,800, and the valve train is completely stable up there too. So,
and what kind of power numbers did you make on the dyno versus the chassis dyno?
So the engine dyno is tough because it was always carbureted on the engine dyno, and it was like we always had too small of a carburetor on it, or like an adapter or something like that. But it made just over 800 on the engine dyno last time. But it made on the chassis dyno with this setup, it made 740 at the tire.
Okay.
But I was having problems with, I was really having to go easy on driving through the clutch that day. And the front seal of the transmission was leaking. I came home and there was like a little bit of oil under the car. And so with the aluminum block, it made 765 at the tire. And I think that if I went back to the chassis dyno with, that was like when I first put it together before it even went to the racetrack, the way it is now. And I've dialed in more vacuum with it. I think that there was something going on with the vacuum pump that day too, because it wasn't making more than like 12 inches of vacuum. And now I'm running like 17 down the track. So I think between the clutch and then the vacuum pump, I think that it would make, 760, 770 the way it is. But
and let's talk about the clutch, since this is a stick shift podcast.
It has the Black Magic Defiant X clutch in there. The one that Kale and Ram worked together on. That I think Rich, you were saying in the last episode you were running that clutch now, right?
I have both, I have a Defiant, a single 11-inch Defiant, and I also have the next gen.
Yeah.
And Kale wanted me to try this one. It definitely is. It's supposed to be a smoother engagement, but man, I had to add a ton of weight. So we're chatting about changing the arm's length a little bit to see if the counterweight, we can get the counterweight to work a little better, because I have like 204 grams of weight on that thing to get it to hook up down track.
That's a lot.
Which is nuts. Like the old one, 100 grams was plenty. So definitely, because the weight is closer to the hat, it seems like it just doesn't, it's not quite, it just needs more weight. But
yeah.
So is yours an 11 or a 10-inch?
It's a 10, but I found the same thing.
Okay.
Like when I took the next gen out, I think I had 46 grams on it total.
Yeah.
And I'm running like 70 now.
And you had a 3-lever, right?
Yeah, 3-lever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine's 6. Now, I'm sure Kale won't listen to this, but Bill was laughing at me the other day because on the last trip, I ended up buying a brand new 26 spline disc, but it showed up too late, and it ended up running a used one. So when I got home, I got this brand new 26 spline, but my transmission's a 29 spline is what I want to run. So I converted it.
Don't say it. Don't talk about this.
So now I've got a 29 spline. Went for a drive today. It was great. But
you're nuts, Rich.
I literally bolted the 29 spline hub onto the 26 spline. I actually tapped the. Yeah.
Well, he swapped hubs on the clutch disc, but
I thought you went back. I thought you went back to the 26 spline input, which I thought was crazy. But
well, I did.
No, swapping the hub is much crazier.
I had to do that at the track, but when I got home, and once I got a new collar, then I was kind of, I got this brand new one. Let's see, can you see that? Look at that bad boy. That'll work.
Yeah.
We can't quite see the nuts and bolts there, but yes, he bolted the new hub to the disc.
It's all good, man.
You really should rivet it.
Yeah, can we send Rich a ballistic blanket for his bell housing?
Oh, God.
You're going to be like those guys at World Cup.
There's 10 5/16 bolts on there.
Did you use the Loctite on that, Rich?
I used the Loctite, plus I threaded it into the hub and then still put a nut on there. So okay. It won't be in there for very long. It's a short term until the new disc shows up. It'll definitely be a backup at some point. But
are you going to race it like that?
Not if I get another one. Okay. I'll probably actually go back to the next gen because I had more luck with it. But I'd run this one in a pinch if I had to. Be fine.
Yeah, I sold my next gen, and part of me wishes I would have kept it just for a spare, and then to see, because I did have it was a steep learning curve with the Defiant, like you're saying, with the weight and everything, and it just works. It seems to work differently. It seems to be like less of a tuning window is what I've found, where it's like it either seems like very aggressive or it wants to glaze the disc on like the 3/4 shift. But I also have ratios in my transmission that are not ideal. So I'm curious to see what happens when I get better ratios.
Yeah, I think it's huge. And for me, even short shifting is where it was causing me some grief.
Yeah.
When the track is not, the track's just not there, and you think short shifting helps. Well, it helps on one case, but it doesn't help. It doesn't help the clutch.
Yeah, if I mess up that 3/4 shift in my car, you might as well just stop the run because it'll just hang it'll hang the RPMs, and sometimes it'll take like over a second to lock the clutch in fourth.
So with your new 5-speed, will you use like a long shifter with that?
I'm kind of leaning towards the H pattern. So, because the Liberty had a long shifter, it says Liberty on it, but it's a long vertigate shifter.
And I guess that's what I meant, like a vertigate, just back and forth with it.
I told Charlie, I said, I'd prefer the H pattern, but if they say like not to run that and run the V gate because it's not going to be as reliable, then I'll run the V gate. I mean, I think worst case, if I run the H pattern, I don't like it because I know that the gates are a little different. It's not like a Tremec or like a T56. It's a longer throw, and especially the 4 to 5 shift, I think, is what G-Force doesn't. They don't like selling that to people that are going to use them at the track and shift into fifth because it is a long way from 4 to 5. So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, worst case, I buy it and it sucks, and I just put a V8 in it.
Yeah, I do have a good buddy, Brent, who runs a really fast Mopar, and he has both. He has a vertigate and he has the H pattern, and we were just chatting about it the other day. And that's what he was saying, is that the 4 to 5 is where he panics a little. He's had issues 4 to 5 before. Only with the H, not with the vertigate.
Yeah, and certainly with an H pattern, it's just one more gear change that you might not get perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, interesting. Yeah, that's cool.
But I ran the vertigate. I've been running that since 2015. So if I go back to that, that's fine too. Running the H pattern would open up some places to race because everybody hates the V gate.
I don't hate it.
But I think it's really funny.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I'm in the same place. Like, I really don't care if it's H or vertigate. It's not a big deal. Are you using the clutch or no?
I have been, but that's sort of one of the reasons why I'm moving towards G-Force is because they do things a little differently with the sliders where you can pull them clutchless. So I think we're going to do a different back cut on the slider where I can just pull that thing. And I may have to hold it in gear in like second and third gear, worst case. But it's going to be a 1-to-1 fifth with a 430 rear. And so I'm going to be in fifth gear by the time I'm doing like 45 miles per hour anyways. So it's going to be going through those gears quick.
So would you, on that transmission, do you have to cut power to make the shift or no?
On the Liberty I did. So I kicked the clutch every shift.
Right. No, but on the new one.
I don't think so.
Wow.
It's not like a full clutchless. It doesn't have like the full ramp on the back side of the slider like a full clutchless does. But if you ever watch like in-car of a Coyote stock car, they're not doing anything to interrupt the power, and they're not kicking the clutch, they're not like blipping the throttle, they're just grabbing and going. And so I told Charlie, I said, that's what I want to be able to do if I can. If it's realistic. Okay. If it's not realistic, then, for like a street car, then that's fine too. But he said that they can do different sliders where, you can just pull it.
Yeah, I think Brent, my buddy with the Mopar, I think he with the Dart, he doesn't use a clutch, and I think he's got an interrupt. I'll have to ask him. But he's been 559, and wow. I think he's been just slightly faster than Bill.
Ouch! Shots fired.
I got something in my eye.
You got something in your eye there, Bill. Yeah,
that happens sometimes.
I think so.
But he's been really happy with it. We were also chatting about the maintenance. And yeah, every time he's pulled that thing apart, geez, it sure looks like new.
Yeah.
Seems to be, that's what Frank runs too, right?
Yeah. And he's got a gear vendor on his, which, again, I'm just copying Frank here. So I'd like to get a gear vendor on mine, but I don't know if it's going to work out with, right now, the way the car is set up, the tail shaft of the transmission and the rear end yoke are like, I'm just barely above it right now with the transmission. And so I've put a gear vendor on and it adds like, I think it's 10 or 11 inches to the back of the transmission.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to have to raise the engine up, which I don't really want to do all that. So,
could just drive a little slower.
That's the other option.
Yeah, right.
You have to spend, you'd have to do a lot of miles to spend $3,000 in gasoline to cover the gear vendor. So I can drive slower. That's fine. Mark drives slow too, usually. So
Mark.
Oh yeah.
Does he have an overdrive or no?
No.
Oh.
Yeah, and he's got.
I guess he kept up with Frank this year on. Yeah, he's got all that slippy stuff happening in between.
Yeah, he's a slippery guy.
Yep.
Yeah,
he kept up with Frank this year though, which I was surprised because him and Frank rode together, and Frank does not go slow, and I was surprised to hear that. Mark just he drives slow in general, like even when he's like towing his car and everything. So that's just kind of, he's like the least aggressive New Jersey driver you've ever met, and then you got Frank who's like, just get out of my way. I need to get the overdrive clicked in, and I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't care if my bike is dragging off the back of the car or the trailer, or it don't matter.
At 23, he had 3 brakes. He drove I think he drove 2 days without a brake on the left front of the car.
Oh, that sounds familiar, Rich.
Yeah.
And I was like, I talked to Joe Rogowski, his co-driver. I was like, how'd it go? And he was like, oh, fine. He didn't slow down at all. He goes, I was like, is it like pulling when he's stopping? And he's like, yeah.
just like totally, yeah. But
I don't understand why the front tires are wearing so differently. I don't get it.
When you went your new PB, was that against Frank?
It was, yeah.
Nicely done.
Thank you.
Nice.
Yeah, I owed him one for a long time.
Yeah.
Is he spraying that thing yet? I know he was talking about it. He's getting it set up for it.
He's getting there. I think he's pretty much there though.
Is he just scared?
No, he's not scared. He just wants it to be right. And
yeah.
He's running. Mark's helping him out with nitrous too, and so Mark is very methodical when it comes to running nitrous on something, and so they're going to start small and go up probably 50 until he gets whatever ET he wants to get to. I think he wants to run 850s with the car. So, but they want to make sure they have like the clutch tune up right, and obviously they're going to have to. They know they're going to have to add clutch to it when they start spraying it, but they're in good shape.
Yeah, it seems like the baby steps are actually smart. I mean, we laugh about it, just put it all in once, but that's actually the smart way to do it. Just
turbo guys, just like click a couple keys and it's already
it's too easy to be super. It's too easy to be dumb.
And too fun.
Yeah,
that too.
And to Bill's comment earlier, I mean, if you put boost on your engine or Frank puts nitrous on his, I mean, when you take a good running engine like that, it doesn't take near as like your heads flow so well. 5 pounds of boost on your engine would be like 15 pounds on an LS. Like you're not trying to cram it through a poor flowing head.
Right.
Even like my heads flow about 380, and people make comments all the time about me not running much boost, but there's not much restriction there. You really don't need a whole bunch of boost if your heads flow well. So,
well,
Right.
and you have 521 cubic inches, Rich.
well, there's that too. Yeah, but
I mean, it's literally 100 cubic inches bigger than Jeff or me, basically. I mean,
Yeah, that
really.
helps.
yeah,
Yeah.
4,000 pounds, 400,
small-
4,050 pounds. Yeah, you need all you can get, man.
That's true, and you're doing pretty good. I mean, 851 is pretty awesome.
Yeah,
I'm very
badass.
impressed every time I think about it. So, yes, it's great.
Well,
You guys
Jeff
are both
broke into
flying.
you broke into the fives too, right? On that best pass.
Yeah, 1599.
That's awesome.
I just got to get that 60 foot in the 330 better because it, like right before I took it apart, it was like in 2020, it was right before my daughter was born. It was like Hail Mary pass. And the car actually went a 928 back in 2020 with the aluminum block. But that pass was like a mess too, but it went a 130 60 foot on that pass.
Ooh, nice.
But then it shook on the 1-2 shift, and then I stayed in it because I knew it was coming apart. But it went the 927 in it, and I think it went like a 145 60 foot or something like that. And did I go? I think I might have went in the 20s at Lebanon also, and it went a 140 60 foot. But to me, it's still like a tenth off. Like it really needs to be like a 129 60 foot and like a 370 or 380 330, I think is the number. And then if it does that, it's gonna just fly out the back because it's picking up. I think the last pass it went 118 to the 8th mile, and then it went 149.9 to the quarter.
I saw that.
Yeah. And it seems like every 10th you can knock off that 60, it's like 2 out the back.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's flying for an.
Yeah, I mean, especially that Fox. Oh yeah, and that Fox body. I mean, you have such a good chassis on that thing. I definitely think you get it in the 120s, 60 foots, for sure.
Yeah, and the local tracks around here have come around a lot, and they're having rentals that are just straight up radial rentals and slick rentals, like at Lebanon Valley. And there's a guy here running those, Scotty Wheels. I don't know if you're familiar with him at all, but he's running them, and he runs a No Time series, and the track when his event is there, it's on point. So I have the facilities to do it around here now too, which is nice.
Nice. What tracks are near you? Sorry.
Oh yeah, Rich. Lebanon Valley Dragway and then New England Dragway.
And you're going to stick with the radials?
I think I'm going to put the 26 back on it. I'm going to keep the radials, but I think that the way I've been going with the car, it's just been shaking and like wheel hopping so bad on the shift that it actually knocked like a half a quarter size piece of paint off of the rear quarter because the trunk lid shook into the quarter. And so I need to refigure out the car on the slicks and get it back to where it was when it was going like that 130 flat 60 foot. And then once I get it fast there, I think that on a small slick and a radial, your suspension geometry should not be that much drastically different. Like on the 26-inch slick, if you slam that thing into the ground, it's not going to like it. Like you need to, like if you try to get the car to squat, it's just, you're going to lose control of that tire. It's not like a big tire. So I think that just have a little bit of separation on the 26-inch tire. And then once I get that, I can go back to back on the same day on the radial and see which one's faster.
Yeah, being NA, that little tire will grow too, which will give you a little bit more mile an hour and stuff out the back. Especially for an NA combination, that probably will help, I would think.
Yeah, not
so.
Sorry, go ahead, Bill.
I was just going to ask Rich, so what have you seen in the difference between going from a slick to a radial? Because you've had pretty good success with the radial as far as the chassis setup. Is it fairly similar or is it pretty different?
Well, when you're at sick week and the tracks are leave your shoes behind, you have to tighten the front end way up. You pretty much try to slow everything down quite a bit in order to get it to work properly. As compared to a
With
slick where it feels like it, yeah, with a radial, yeah. And what I was struggling with is just chattering and the tire with a slick. Like the first year I went to sick week, like I was continually fighting. Yeah. I was trying to turn the tire into a radial, like more pressure and slowing it down. Yeah, I'd say that's the biggest thing is you just have to slow everything down because it hits more aggressive. You want it to separate, but you don't want it to separate too fast. But then you do lose mile an hour out the top because the tire doesn't grow on a radial. Where I could definitely see on a slick, I wouldn't be RPMing as much going through. But since I've switched, I literally went from a 350 to a 340 because I was running out of RPM.
Mm-hmm.
You just need to spin it up to 82. You'll be all right.
Yeah. And then my good buddy Trevor and I will both be going up in smoke as we go through the tracks. That would be no good. And then it's a long walk home. And, Dad's 82. He doesn't like to walk that far.
Yeah, that is true.
You wear your thumb out on that trip.
Yeah, no kidding. You've only done
showing leg on the side of the highway. They'd be like, "Is that Chuck Norris showing his leg with his thumb out?"
Yeah.
So when you slow the front end down, how much are you seeing? Like, how much time does it take to get to full extension on the radial on the front?
If I didn't slow it down enough that it would see it before the gear change, I would lose a tire.
Really?
So it continues to separate in the front all the way till the first. In fact, the back too. For me, I had to slow it down enough that it could keep rising all the way till I did a gear change, and then there was a bit of a reset, and then it would you wouldn't notice it as bad in other gears because it wouldn't be pulling as hard. So it wouldn't be pulling the front up, but first gear, it was pretty critical to not top it out before I shifted.
And then what would happen when you shift if you topped out?
Well, if I topped out before I shifted, it would usually lose a tire. It would knock the tire off.
That's exactly what was happening in my car.
Yeah, and so I had to revalve. Go ahead.
So my front end, I was seeing, it'd get to full extension by like quarter of a second. And then you would see, even on the shift, you'd watch the shock sensor on my strut, and it would drop. It looked like it was dropping a lot on the data. It would drop like an inch. And then when you look down at the shock sensors, they're going haywire because as soon as it dropped the front end just a little bit, it lost the separation and then lost the tire on the back end. And so that was one thing I wish I would have got to try before I packed it in, was to slow the front end way down, because that was something that Tim Flanders was telling me when he was watching it. He thought that the front end was extending too fast.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah. I didn't know until I had shock sensors on there that that's what was going on. But
yeah,
well, my shock sensors are Cadillac ride height sensors, Mega Squirt.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could see it. It was pretty consistent. In fact, a couple of times I didn't look at the shock data, and so I was doing all kinds of other stuff. And then I went back and looked, and sure enough, I had topped the shock off at like 1 second or something. And I wouldn't be into the next gear, and it would knock the tire off just about every time.
Wow.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, I'm putting shock sensors on my car this winter, But from the video and stuff that we would see, like I have a Mustang 2 front end, so very little travel.
Yeah.
And when it would top out that front end, it would lose a tire every time. And then we would crank it down, and then we did make some changes to the front end, picked up a little over 60% more front end travel, and then still kept it tight, but it wasn't topping out. And it seemed to help, but I think the shock data is going to make a big difference. That's going to make a big difference. And so we'll see. We'll see. It's always a scientific experiment.
Coming from slicks, it's like you want to get the weight up and back as fast as possible. So it's hard to get out of that mindset when you've been running slicks for so long. And then, with as much as I can get to the track, it makes it tough to really, like, you just have to get passes on it. Really, you need a ton of data. And that's a nice thing about drag and drives, like you guys know, where you learn so much about your car in that 1 week. Because you're getting to just go back and forth all the time.
Yeah, agreed.
And what? So you've only done drag week so far. I know you were going to do Midwest, but you've only done drag week.
Yeah, I've only done drag week, and then I was supposed to go to street and eat like last week, and that I kind of miscalculated my vacation time, and so I'm just out of vacation time pretty much. So I decided not to do it because I could go negative on vacation time, but it's not worth going into next year. I'll do drag week next year again.
Are you thinking any of the sick events?
It's tough because it's just such a haul from me to get to them. I mean, look who I'm talking to here, but no sympathy from the Canadian side. But I just cannot spend an extra week of travel. I get 4 weeks of vacation time, but I get 4 weeks of PTO, but that's like everything. That's sick time, doctor's appointments with the kids, all that stuff. So I just can't take an extra like 3 or 4 days worth of travel time. So even if drag week, like if they put drag week in like Oklahoma this year or something, I'd have to figure something else out because I need to be there in a day, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely in a different situation with a 24 and a 26-year-old kids. So yeah, you'll get there eventually.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about it. I like drag week, and I going there back in 23. It was like feeling like I never left, and I think that all the other events have done good for drag week because you get like the core groups at all these events where like Rocky Mountain Race Week has its core group of people and they go to that event and everybody knows each other. And then even like Street and Eat, I was hearing the way that people were talking about that event and it's like, oh yeah, they're building that group of racers that's always going to go to that. And you'll see like the same group of 20 or 30 people there all the time. And drag week had that feel in like 13, I felt like, when they had 250 cars, and then maybe lost a little bit of that when it got bigger, when they went up to like 400. But when I went back in 23, it felt like I was back in like 2013 again, where it had more of that feel where like you could just go up and talk to anybody, and registration was not so crazy and hectic. I was on the wait list and it was like no issue getting in there, and because people have somewhere else to go, and so they find where they want to go, and it's like that core group of people that were there in 2013 or they never left, but they're still there waiting for me when I got back. So it was a lot of fun.
And I know 13 was my first drag week, and I think it was yours too, right, Rich? That's where we met.
Yep.
Yeah. So probably didn't meet you, but that was the first one I did too.
I think I met Rich. I know I met Bob. We were in Impound together one day on like the last day.
Yeah.
And I know I saw you guys running around, but I don't think I ever met you guys like for more than a couple seconds on that year.
Yeah. Mark always looks so angry, so we try to avoid him.
He's very standoffish, that
guy. I got to ask, the last picture I saw, you and him together, it looked like he had lost 100 pounds.
Yeah, I think he's like 75 or 80 down. Yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah, and you've lost quite a bit too over the last few years.
Yeah, in 19 I lost like 75 pounds, and then when Andrea got pregnant, then it was like she was just like sick all the time. So we were just like eating. She was just going for whatever would make her feel better. And then I was like, all right, I guess I'm back. I'm off the Weight Watchers diet now. And so I gained like 25 back, and I've been sitting there ever since. So I'll get back there, but I don't know. Just like Frank and I had this conversation, and he's like, I'm 20 pounds overweight, but I'm happy and I do what I want. So, as long as I don't get back up to 250, I'll be all right.
Yeah.
That's a slow the car down kind of weight. Don't need that.
Yeah, I wouldn't have to put the ballast in for drag week.
That's right. That's the best kind of weight to lose, honestly. But yeah, that's good.
And what's your next event, Jeff?
Unofficially, we might be doing that NHRA deal again. Maybe.
Oh, cool.
I don't know. I heard they might want us back. So I kind of figured that'll be a one and done type of deal. That was so fun. It was so awesome to do that, especially at my home track. It was like a dream come true. And then to be able to do it with, all of our best friends from Drag Week was really cool, and put on a show for like all the Northeast guys.
That was awesome.
Yeah, it was so cool. And Frank and I got to run like every day. We just sort of turned it into like a stick shift shootout, and he whooped on me the first day for the first two passes, and then I finally got it figured out and got around him. But I've been trying to beat him since 2016 when we had the stick shift shootout, the finals. He went 997 with a 3, and I went 997 with a 9.
Oh.
That was actually a moment where I was like, I need 5 forward gears in this car at some point, because we're like this. We're right next to each other. And I'm first gear, and then second gear he kind of gets out on me a little bit, and then third gear he put like half a car on me, and it was like, because I'm just sitting there wasting all my time in second and third when he's like already in fourth. And that was the moment where it was like, oh, there's the difference between the 4 and the 5 speed.
Yeah.
Just watch him go. So
honestly,
we raced that time. We raced at E-Town twice. And he beat me both times there. And then New England. And I finally got him. He came up and he's like, did you spray that thing? I was like, no. He's like, what the hell? He's like, what did you do? I was like, I figured it out, I guess. I stopped trying to leave it like a slick car. Because I was still trying to leave it like 5,000 or 5,500 on the radial.
Oh, yeah.
Back down to 3750. And then it went.
Then it worked.
So the clutch slipped and got you RPM, and
it just didn't. It was just annihilating the tire when I was leaving at that. That 5,500, it wouldn't even move. And so I tried messing with the shocks, and it just like, I can't bring myself away from that mentality of, 5,500 RPMs and letting the clutch out. But it was hard turning that thing down to 3750.
Well, especially when Frank's beside you, leaving at like 13,000 RPM.
I don't think he's on the radial now too, so I think his is lower too.
Yeah. I'm glad he stuck with it. He seems to be starting to make some gains and stuff, but he's going to be he's going to be a problem for sure when he sprays that thing. I've been beat by him many times myself, and I think I beat him 2 or 3 times too, and I'm quite a bit quicker than him now, but he's pretty good at games and playing with you on the tree and mind games before you get there, and he's great.
He's got you by 100 on the tree every time. Like, I don't know how he gets that car to react that way. Is it just he can cut like a 050 light. Like it's not even anything in that car.
Yeah, that's awesome.
My car, if I cut a 150 light, that's like real good. I think maybe just the way the front, like with all the front end travel, it's like it's wasting some time before it starts moving. But
yeah.
I started realizing at the last event when I bottomed out the yoke in the transmission that I think my chassis is going like this, like and I mean, you knock some paint off. I've got some Bondo that's cracking on my car because what, like you described, when you rattle radials, it is freaking. It's just horrible in the car. Like it just feels like the whole thing is. I'm surprised that something's not broke every time it happens. But I think I need a couple of extra bars and some more weight underneath the car. Hey, Bill, and to keep the rear end from trying to join the front end of the car, because I think I've got recommended clearance on that yoke, and I can still, and solid hind joints, upper and lower, because I'm triangulated 4-link like you, and that yoke still bottomed out. Like I was, baffled. So it obviously needs some more chassis stiffening to stop that from happening. But yeah, I don't know. I got to figure that out too, because like when I was at Yellow Belly and stuff, I was getting better at getting on the 2-step, bumping in, and getting better reaction times. But drag and drive kind of teaches you bad habits. So when you actually go to race, you really need to get your shit together.
Well, we've talked about this, Rich, and the solution is always the same. What is it? Just turn it down. You'll be fine.
You don't want to win like that, Bill.
No,
I don't. But I want him to be safe, and I want his yoke to be good. So that's a good solution.
No problem. I'm gonna solve both those problems. So.
What's in the cooker, Rich?
Well, just wait and find out.
Oh boy. Yep. New chassis, new car, maybe 1,000 pounds lighter.
Yeah. That was what a smart guy would do. But
nice.
Congrats on 160,000 miles on that thing too. By the way, man, that's.
Thanks.
I think it was 170.
170? Yeah. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, crazy.
I think about that. There was somebody was like, just found this 1,000-mile Camaro, Z28 Camaro, and I'm thinking, that's got to be the saddest car ever.
Yeah.
It wasn't meant to sit in a barn, and my GTO is going to be able to tell stories when it dies. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, totally. Huh. Oh, so should we get to the TKO round, Jeff? I think you got a preview of these. What do you think, Rich?
I think so. I don't know what time it is. What time are you? A couple hours ahead, Jeff? Is it like 9:30 there?
Yeah, it's 9:30. So I do got one more question for Rich though, because you talked about Yellow Belly. What did you do to the clutch tune-up before you went down that track for the first time? Because that place looks just sketchy as all hell.
The crazy part is they have no equipment. But that track to the 330, I did a 139 60 foot there.
Oh, okay.
And I was on radials. And that was Tom Gunner, Jimmy Dale, who said that. He's like, the track is great on the front end. He's like, run radials. But then it's bumpy and there's all kinds of shit. But that first 330 feet, it's good. It is really good. It's not contaminated with any other sprays or anything. It's just plain old rubber, and it is amazing when you watch some of those really fast guys doing 150 miles an hour on that sketchy ass track. It is nuts how good the front of that track is.
Yeah.
So
that place looks cool.
Yeah,
but I don't know if I really want to race there.
Oh, you got to do it. You got to do it once. I'm going back for in April. It's crazy, but at the same time, all the people there are they're a little bit insane standing so close in the starting line, but the rest of it, the gambling and the like the crazy gambling, like big dollar bets and all the shit that's going on, it's something you got to experience once, anyways.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So I'll start it off. Jeff, what's the first car that you owned and or modified?
First car I owned was a 86 Mustang. That was my mom's car. It was an 86 convertible. And that was just a V6. Like, I didn't do anything to that car. It was, I ended up rear-ending somebody. It was my first car, so I wadded that thing up. But I came to the realization with that car that I've had a Fox body in my life since I was like 5 years old, basically, at one time or another in my life. Because she had that car from when I was like 5 to like 16. So that was my first car. I had a 90 GT. I put like a Hurst shifter in it, short throw shifter. That was as much as I did to that one, and sold it. And then 2003, I bought this car, and I would say this car is the one that I've modified, and it's, it's taught me everything. This is the one. I don't really have a long history of like hot rods or anything like that. It's like this is the car I bought that I wanted in high school, and got in an accident the first night we got the car. There was a friend of the family who had a dealer plate, and he put his dealer plate on. It was raining. The car's tires were questionable, and he got off the wrong exit because we couldn't see the signs, and so he just lost it on like some diesel oil on the road, and it's been that car ever since. I love that car. It's it's taken me everywhere. So I wouldn't know you guys without it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. That's you're OG. You weren't following along. I need to get a Fox body Mustang to go fast. You've been there all the time.
I saw this guy in high school, and he had this. It was a black Fox body on drag lights, of course, with silver stripes. And every day when he left, he would just first gear and then bang second and just like lay rubber down the parking lot. And I was like, that's when I had my white GT, and I was like, the notchback just looks so much cooler. I need that car. And so saved a bunch of money and, bagging groceries and stocking shelves. And I bought that car with all I had, and it's taken all I've had ever since.
Keep you working for a long time.
Yep.
Okay, let's bang her into second gear. So far, the transmission's still holding together. Third gear's coming, though.
Third gear, watch out.
Yeah. What, in your opinion, has been the biggest change to move our sport forward?
Now, I think drag racing in general is people adapting either fuel injection or data to know what's going on. And I think that obviously carries over to stick shift racing. But I've listened to a lot of answers on this one, and you've had all of them. But I think the one thing that's changed with stick shift racing is the mindset of people that want to go stick racing. Because you guys have been doing this for, as long as I have too. And it's like, you used to be the only guy with a fast stick car at the track. When my car ran 10s with a stick in it, it was like one of the only ones around to do that. And even when I bought my Liberty, I had a conversation with those guys about a T56, and we were wondering if a car would even like live in the 9s with one of those transmissions, because nobody's even doing it back then. And I think that in the stick shift world, people's willingness to try things now is like at an all-time high, because nobody was running like slipper clutches on the street because everybody said you couldn't do that. And I think that the mentality of like, you can't do this, those days are over. Like, you can't run a spool, you can't run a faceplated transmission, you can't shift a V-gate on the street, you can't downshift a V-gate. It's like, you can do all those things, and people are just like, they're just getting out there and doing it. And I think that attitude carries through to everybody. And now we got 6-second stick cars.
Yeah, I think when people say, when people say you can't do it, it's a challenge. It's like, oh yeah, game on.
Yeah, but I think people don't give up on stick shift stuff anymore like they used to, because we have better stuff to, the parts technology has gotten better, but also people are using the stuff that we got.
True. Yeah. All right, let's throw it into third gear and cross our fingers it holds. If you could spend one day with anyone, who would it be and what would you do?
So just from like a personal standpoint, I think my grandfather, I'd love to be able to have my grandfather meet both of my kids. He passed away right when Andrea got pregnant. And he was like the first person that we told, I think, besides my mom, that Andrew was pregnant. And it was like a week before he passed. So number one, him, I'd love for him to see, my son is named after him. And then racing is tough because like we're kind of spoiled with the people we get to hang out with. So I think every year I just want to go to a drag and drive and hang out with my buddies and get to see, people like Mark and Frank, and like I haven't seen you guys in a while, but I ran into Rich at Sick Week, and like we're also lucky to be able to have this thing that we've participated in that has exploded into something much bigger. But at the core of it, it's all about like going and hanging out with your buddies for a week. And so I think that if I could pick, it's like, if I could pick one thing to do, I'd pick to go to Drag Week and hang out with whoever shows up.
Good. I like it.
That's a great answer. I hope Keith and the guys will get a stick shift class, because I will be back if they make an official stick class.
I'm surprised that they haven't yet. This is a rule year.
Yeah, I'll be hitting them up at PRI again.
Yeah. I think if all of us got together and send emails to look for that, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, we survived third.
Yeah, first time in a while.
First time in a while, yeah. What influences you to build your car? I think you've sort of answered that already a bit.
Yeah, I think that the car just always pushes me to try to be better with it. And, being NA and stick shift, I've made it difficult on myself, but I just really want to see that 899 slip with a stick shift. And that's the big motivation right now. But I like pushing myself and doing things the hard way.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
I second or third that.
It drives me nuts sometimes, but at the end of the day, it's like I wouldn't want to do it. I wouldn't want to press the easy button.
Yeah. Okay. Fifth, Jeff, and what in your opinion is the secret to stick shift racing? Like, what's the magic in the sauce?
I don't know. Past couple of years have been rough, so I don't know if I have the magic anymore. No, I think just getting out there and testing and not trying to do too much at once.
That's hard.
I fall into that trap constantly, where it's like, when I put the new motor in, I should have just probably kept the suspension the same as it was. But I get in my own head and I start thinking about, all right, well, I'm adding 100 pounds to the nose, so maybe I need to make the rear of the car more aggressive to make up for that. And, I've gotten better this year about keeping the car the same way and then like baselining it at the track when I get there. Make one run to see what it's going to do on that exact surface, the way it was the last time, and then start from there with one change at a time, and not try to change the front of the car and the rear of the car and do something to the clutch. And I think that just consistency of your program is the key.
Yeah, my goal this winter is don't screw it up for the winter. Like, don't make a bunch of changes that when you come out in the spring, you're starting over again, because it's so easy to do.
Yeah, agreed.
I say this, but I'm also putting a whole new transmission with 5 new ratios and changing the rear gear of the car.
Those are just small things, just little things.
But I've been band-aiding the car for years for that 1-2, and I just didn't realize how bad it was until I had changed everything around it to figure it out.
Yeah.
All right, 6th gear. That's reverse. Is
we
that
get a bonus
reverse?
one?
Yeah.
Reverse, yeah.
What advice would you give to somebody who's listening to this, one of our 2 listeners, and want to get into this crazy sport?
This question I didn't think too much about, but I don't know. Have fun. Just have fun. Just get out there and do something. Like, don't wait until, like Frank says, how many summers you got left. Like, next year you get hit by that bus, nobody's ever going to be like, oh, remember when that guy did drag week? Because, it's just go do it. If I hear people all the time, oh, I should get out and do that. So it's like, yeah, you should, because it's the most fun you could ever have. But if you want to go do something, just go do it, because you got one life to live here.
I have to second you, Jeff. I first met Frank in person at Midwest Drags. I don't remember the year. But when he said that, I think about that to this day. Like, that's one of the most poignant things I think, at least in my opinion, anybody's ever said that I've listened to, is like, how many summers I got left? What am I going to be doing with those? And if you see those reels where people take, they got 100 years and they rip off where their age is and they rip off where the average age is, dude, the strip's only like that long.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's all you got left. And it's like, wow, you just need to do it.
Yeah.
You can't take it with you. So,
nope.
Yeah. It's on my whiteboard at work. And there's lots of times I'm having conversations with some of my people, and you should read what that says up there.
Yeah.
Like,
and what does it say, Rich? Is it that same thing?
Yeah, it says, how many summers do you have left? And I almost forced them to think about it. Like, how many good summers do you have left? So whether it's with your kids and camping, or this vacation that you've wanted to do forever, I mean, you really don't know. Good friend of mine, he's riding his motorcycle and crashed, and he severed his spine between 3 and 4, Tony Lee, and he's got a great spirit above him. I got to go see him, but I mean, that's pretty life-changing for him. And he was a guy who was out there with his Corvette, racing all over the place, doing a bunch of no prep and stuff. So I'm sure he's pretty happy that he did all that stuff, and I'm sure we'll get him back where he's doing it again soon. But man, life can change so fast. Don't want to wait.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, Rich.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of friends go and some family go really early and not get a chance, and it was 2013. My cousin passed away in a car accident, and she's 17 years old, and like she lived a lot of life in the first 17 years of her life, but that was a moment that was really eye-opening for me. It's like, dude, none of us have a guarantee here, and so get out there and live your life the way you want to live it, because nobody's going to do that for you.
Well, we have one guarantee, and that is we're all going to die someday.
Yeah.
We just don't know when.
And the 3 of us are not going to put automatics in our cars. There's 2 guarantees.
Guaranteed.
It's not happening.
Mark probably thought that's all we were going to talk about if he came on here, but that wasn't true. I mean, he's had a great year too. He's not far off from following Jason into the 7. So
that car is moving out. It's impressive.
We were at Lebanon, and he came up to hang out, and I was in like this little street car shootout, and his car was like too fast for the slower class and too slow to run with the small tire guys. So he was just running test and tune. and then oil downs and all that stuff. And so knew he was only going to get one pass. And he took the ramp out of it and went up there. But I was videoing the pass, and he went, and I thought he was taking it easy out there. And he went like an 820 something. And I was like looking at the tree, and I was like, is that a 3 or a 2? I said that to a guy next to me, and he's like, no, he's like, that fucker's moving. I was like, yeah. It's like, the car, since you put the Pro Charger on it, it's just like, it's always been very impressive, but that car, it almost goes 7s. It'll go 7s, no problem.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully.
It's crazy when you see sorry, go ahead, Rich. The delay sucks for you. Go ahead.
You go ahead.
I was just going to say, when you see a pass and it doesn't look fast and then the numbers shock you, those are always the best because they feel slow in the car. It's nice and smooth, and that's just where it's at. It's not when they're violent and it's shaking, and those are the ones that are always a hot mess anyway.
Yeah, that thing's impressive. Well, Jason just went 798 or something, but I think he got a piston or something. But same thing. That car,
torch the head just a little bit. Just like he nipped the head gasket, and it got a little bit of the cylinder head. Just a little guy.
It'll be fine.
Yeah. I mean, he once again kicked ass on 666. Like, that's so impressive, and he's got that. He knows that car so well to get it to run like the number. So it was pretty cool. That was a great event too. Even just to have Honk and the whole family there, and Jason, and those one-off events are pretty cool.
Jason had Honk. He had a Honk crew with him in his car too, right? He had Zach, so I'm sure he didn't have a dull moment with Zach as a co-pilot.
No, they had a good time. Other than the brakes squealing like crazy until he switched to some TBMs, but he was telling me about it, and I'm thinking whatever, brakes squeal a little bit, and then he pulls into a parking lot, and I was like, oh my god!
You're like, where's the pack of school buses at?
Oh. Freaking dogs are running away for miles. Yeah, it was bad. Glad I got that sorted out anyways. Once again, that thing's super impressive.
For Jay to come, he basically came right back from 666 and then went out and ran a 7 with that thing. It was just unbelievable too. I mean, everybody is just hauling.
Yep. Well, awesome. We've kept you for just about 2 hours, and you probably got to get to work in the morning. So,
yeah.
All right.
Got to pay for the car parts somehow.
Well, let's wrap this up. We'll do a huge thanks to Stick Shift Nation for hosting this podcast.
Absolutely.
And of course, you can find the Clutch Burners podcast on all the podcast platforms. And we would love to see you at PRI in a Clutch Burners t-shirt and a Stick Shift Nation t-shirt. So go over to stickracing.com and buy both of those. And that's all I got. You got anything, Rich?
Nope. Just thanks to Jeff for spending a couple hours with us. This was awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. This is great.